Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm Representative Molly Burke of Brattleboro, and I'm the current chair of the Sexual Harassment Prevention Panel. And I think that maybe our first order of business is to elect a chair and see if anybody, I'm happy to do it again, but if anybody else would like to put their name forward, that's great.
Is a motion in order
I guess so.
right now? Okay, so I move that we elect Molly again as chair. What's that, 2-year session?
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
We have anyone who's here for
We have a quorum.
Michael's name.
Oh, Mike, I'm sorry, I forgot. All right, well, we better wait then.
We have a
so-
quorum.
Oh, wait for me. Okay, fine. I think we actually spoke to you about that before in a conference. Okay, great. So thank you very much, everybody. I accept and I really appreciate your support. So now we need to do introductions because we have, so why don't we go around the table and just do introductions and then we can get on to the next. Oh, sorry. I have agendas and I'm sorry that somehow they didn't get formatted very well, but they are. That's okay. I have mine. The Word document is not cooperating.
Shall I
All
start?
right, so why don't you start, Caroline?
So my name is Carolyn Brannigan. I'm the state representative. And I represent the towns of Georgia and Fairbanks up in Franklin County. This is my 21st year in serving here in the State House.
And also you've been on the committee for, yeah,
Well, I did take 2 terms off at, a ways back. So that's why people that came in with me, like in with Pat Brennan, those folks have more years. Because they've been with me. But anyway, 21 years for me.
And you served on this committee previous to this.
Last session, yes, but that was my first term on this committee. I've been on Ways and Means for a year now.
I'm Beth Quiggy, colony 3. I represent Sheffield, Wheelock, Sutton, Newark, and Linden. I was appointed last spring and it's been my first full biennium that I'm new to this committee.
and welcome. And we're really happy you're following in the footsteps of your wonderful mother, Connie Quibby.
Troy Hendrick, I'm a representative from Burlington, veteran Burlington, around the campus and the hospital and, to the Winnebago Bridge. I'm walking into my second term and also my second term serving on this or panel.
I'm Arlene Donovan. I'm the Director of Legislative Human Resources. So nice to be here with you again.
I'm Sophie Zanati, so I'm relatively new to the Office of Legislative Counsel since October. And I've taken over the portfolio that Damien Leonard had before, so I'm here in the same role that Damien would have been previously. He's moved over to transport.
Welcome.
I'm Peggy Farron. I'm the HR attorney in Office of Human Resources, and I'm doing the sort of procedural and case processing piece that Damien did.
And we really appreciate your help as you came in last year to
Oh,
step into the
thank
role.
you.
Yeah.
I've only been here since March, so
Yeah.
Welcome.
thank you.
Good morning, I'm Mike Burwick. And it's taken a while, but all of a sudden overnight I gained the appellation of old fart. And entering my 10th term here. And I'm a southerner like Molly. We're down in the Southeast Kingdom. I represent Putney and Dummerston from the Vision 4 district. And I've been on this move for a few years now.
Yeah,
Appreciate the opportunity to do the work.
yes, we've been a good team here. Okay, so I think now, I think first, maybe we were gonna give an overview of the policies and procedures. And then Arlene could talk about the role of the HR department, and Sophie, you could talk about what your specific role would be. Okay, so we all know what everybody's doing and whom to reach out to.
Brendan, would you like to go first since you have to leave for an 8:30.
I can.
Yes, that's a
okay,
good
that's
idea.
okay with you.
Sorry,
It's
fine.
It's fine. Sorry, I have to leave at 8:30 for another meeting. I just want to give a formal overview of the HR department. I know I've been with this group here for a couple of years and you've seen me in and out throughout the State House, but I honestly don't think I've ever had an opportunity to formally introduce myself or talk about the formal introduction of the HR office, which is really, I don't know if I can call it new anymore to the General Assembly, but we're going into our 4th year. So we have the Legislative Office of Human Resources was established several years ago under statute. And I was brought in as the Human Resources Director to sort of establish the department and get it off the ground. And we're going into year number 4, which is unbelievable and hard to believe that it's gone by so fast. But under the Office of HR, under the statute, as it's written, we support all of the members of the General Assembly and staff in multiple areas. I'll just list off a few. So we help with establishing policies and procedures. We provide support and advice and guidance to members and staff. We conduct investigations for staff or anything that involves staff or even members if it's applicable and when appropriate. We provide advice and guidance about investigations and things like that. So that sort of transitions over to why HR is sitting here with this panel, and we also sit with the other host panel, the other discrimination prevention panel. So with the transition and with the new HR office, we have been moving the HR work that the other offices have sort of been supporting and conducting themselves without an HR office. We've been moving that work over to the HR office. And so if you fast forward, now we have Maggie's position. So she's the HR employment attorney. She does our internal, legal work. She supports all of you just like we do in HR. And she also will be supporting and staffing the panels as Damien did before from that legal perspective. And so if you can talk about the bill drafting, which is why she's here. So that's what we're doing from the HR perspective. As far as the staff is concerned, just to give you like a quick overview, the HR office supports the staff in the entire, what we call HR life cycle, which is everything from recruiting through offboarding when they leave employment and everything in between. So we're a fully established HR office and we help them with training and benefits and performance management and everything that you would find in a typical HR office. So happy to be here again with you and looking forward to a great session. Thank
We're
you.
really happy and lucky to have a dedicated HR office.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been great. Oh, yes.
Okay. Sophie or Maggie, who wants to go next?
I can go next since this is sort of introductory stuff. So I made everybody a packet. And this contains house rules. This contains the current policy and current procedures. And I highlighted the house rules so that you know where we are looking. Okay, so this panel is established by House Rule 90C, which is a part of the regulation of conduct by the body, and it contains all of the stuff for the ethics panel, the discrimination panel, sexual harassment panel. And just as a very brief overview, I'd like to look at C4, which is our first business today. Electing a chair, check, done. Adopt procedures to conduct its business. We have that currently, although it could always be revised. Adopt a policy against sexual harassment in compliance with 21 VSA section 495H. We also have that. Damien drafted both the statute and the policy, so I'm very confident that it is in compliance with that statute. Section 5, so this panel receives and investigates complaints of alleged sexual harassment against members of the House, the Speaker's staff, or the clerk or her staff. So this explicitly doesn't include other staff. So the IT people, the HR people, ledge ops, all that stuff. I think that could, I think that is a thing that we should spend some time on this biennium. And officially moving over staff stuff to a separate policy. But we can get there. So, right,
Can I
and
just interrupt and put something, a pin in something? I don't know if we talked about this already, but I'm sorry I was a little late. We ran into something last year, a jurisdictional snafu, and I just want to put a pin in that.
That's on the agenda,
Okay.
yes. But we're not, we're just
Okay,
discussing issues that we've not dealt with in the past, like moving
Right.
forward.
so this number 5 describes the sort of investigatory and adjudicatory piece of the work that this panel does. So this is your neutral, sorting out actual complaints and administering a process to find out what happened when it comes to regulated individuals. And the other piece in subsection 6 is about training and advice and potentially advocacy. So the way I see it, there's kind of 2 philosophical bases for what this group does. One of which is a neutral fact-finding and procedural piece, and the other is more in the training and advocacy world. Okay, so the next document is the policy for the prevention of sexual harassment. And this states that the panel, along with the Senate Sexual Harassment Panel, has jurisdiction over, quote, staff from legislative offices that are not specifically dedicated to either chamber. That's in the second paragraph on the first page. But again, I think that's a little bit at odds with the explicit language of both the procedural rules and the House rules. So I just think that that's something to think about this biennium. And again, there's language that says, the panels investigate and adjudicate complaints in a manner that is fair, expeditious, and nonpartisan. This is the direction to approach each complaint in a neutral manner, give respondents the opportunity to respond and be heard. I got a lot of experience with this when I worked at UVM. And looking at things like what the Student Conduct Office does, what the Office of Equal Opportunity does. So that's the sort of lens that I look at these things through.
Just a question.
Yeah.
Can you tell me the definition of adjudicate? If we adjudicate, what do we do?
That is a great question. So the way that these things work is if a complaint comes to this panel and it's not resolved by informal means, as you'll see in the procedures, and there is jurisdiction over it, so the allegation could be a potential violation of this policy, then there's a whole procedure to come to a conclusion and adjudicate and get to a finding, right? There's a hearing, there's an outside investigation, and at that point, this panel makes a recommendation to the House about the outcome. And I think that's the adjudicatory function, is saying, based on all this evidence, based on the investigation, based on our assessment of the evidence in front of us, we think that there was a violation of the policy, and this is our recommendation for the outcome. So that's how I see the adjudication.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Like a judgment, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
But it sounds like we can only recommend, like our ethics training yesterday about like censuring a member or expulsion of a member, that's up to that body. So
Precisely.
we could recommend to the body if it was something serious
Good
enough,
point.
but they would have to, the body would have to vote.
And I do think, and I haven't read those policies since last year, but I think we provided for in our ability to kind of help facilitate the more informed
Yes.
response.
Oh, yeah.
Mediation or.
Yeah.
So, and we'll get there for sure, and I think that that's overwhelmingly what actually happens. I think the more important piece of this. Okay, so the policy identifies the panel members as the first points of contact for sexual harassment complaints. So you may hear from people who are concerned about something that happened to them or that they witnessed. These people may want to talk about their options, and I think it's just important for the panel to be aware that that's part of what you do, is providing ear for people who are potentially in distress, and may just have questions. You know, I saw a thing or something happened that I'm uncomfortable with. And then finally, I did want to identify the confidentiality piece. So it's really important to keep all panel proceedings and inquiries strictly confidential, unless and until there's a formal hearing and a determination. Again, which I think is sort of unlikely to happen, but it could. So there's also, and I think some of you have experience with this in the same thing we've put in our discussion, that you could end up in a circumstance because the complainant and the respondent aren't bound by confidentiality. They can go to the press and they can talk to whomever they want. So you could find yourself in a position where everybody knows about something, but you can't say anything, which is uncomfortable, but it does protect people's feeling that you are a trusted resource. And regardless of who asks, and regardless of what they say, you won't say anything. And then finally, the last document is the procedures.
And I just,
Yeah.
bring up on page 7, contact information that I have taken Record's play plans, yeah.
Well,
There was like everybody else's.
yeah. We should probably add,
Yeah, and this is the policy and procedure on the website as well,
yes,
so that
yes,
should be updated.
it should for sure be updated. Yes. I believe that, well, we can get to that. So on the procedural document, again, I just want to note that a regulated individual is defined as a house member, Betsy Ann and her staff, and the speaker's staff, excluding other staff, and excluding a lot of the people who are protected by this policy. So any member of the executive branch or the judicial branch, or lobbyists or the public. So in Rule 2, we'll note that anyone can contact the panel to discuss sexual harassment. If the complaint is against a regulated individual, you can advise them of their panel options. And I think one important thing to have in your brain when you get a complaint is that there are 3 things that people need to hear. They need to hear that you have to tell the other members of the panel when this happens. So if somebody comes to you and says, I want to talk to you about something, but you can't tell anyone, that's not an option. You have to at least tell the other members of the panel, and you may have to, depending on what they tell you, you may have to tell other people too.
So you should be upfront with people. right?
Precisely, and that can be such a hard conversation. So you need to tell them that. You need to tell them that the panel may need to gather additional information. So you may need to ask some questions to some other people, look at some documents. You know, I can imagine somebody saying something happened in a committee meeting and then watching video of that recorded committee meeting or something like that. And then again, just let them know that the panel may or may not be able to keep it confidential. Okay, so the legislature has a legal obligation to stop sexual harassment when it occurs. And that's just a part of that. You don't always have an option. You may have to address the situation. You may have to take it to. Yes.
I'm sorry, I just want to back up just a little bit, on the, the required disclosure piece, mandatory reporting. So this is work I've done in my career as well, so it's not at all uncommon for me to have to say to a student, as that is coming, that will come a mandatory reporter, yada, yada, yada. One, there's almost always sort of clues or sort of intuitive, I think I know where this is going, can I stop you? I just want to make sure you're aware that I'm on this panel and I'm not a confidential person. But I have either forgotten or don't know who the confidential sources are that we can refer them to.
So. A confidential source, so somebody who would definitely not say anything.
Not have to, not be required to.
Boy, that's a
But can maybe
great
counsel them.
question. I
Like,
don't
can we
know.
say-
I know in the higher education context, what typically would happen, and again, you know, you're at UVM, I was with the Vermont State College system. But typically a confidential resource would be someone external, like a local domestic
Yeah.
violence organization or something like
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
where they wouldn't have any obligation to be reporting back.
But just like.
But internally,
Rights commission, would they be a resource? Is it close by? And
They are definitely confidential.
that's what I meant, yeah.
So I
Who
think
did you say, Karen?
Vermont HRC, Human Rights
Oh, yeah.
Council Committee.
I think that's
Friday.
I think that's something that would have to get worked out with them on how, what those
Okay.
roles would look like, because right now, as I understand it, they don't have jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Over, you know, over anything that would arise here. If they did have jurisdiction, then that would change things too, because then they would.
That's just always part of the script on campus, because I can say, look, I think I know where this is going, and I want to make you aware of who I am and what my role is.
Yeah.
I also want to help you find the people who might be able to have this conversation with. And as regards, I'm more than happy to talk to them out of that moment, if that would be helpful for anybody.
Yeah, so for staff, it would be the EAP,
Yeah.
and that was 100% my answer at EBM, but again, it doesn't, numbers aren't covered by.
Can we find out, maybe
Yes,
a list of
100%.
people who are close by and, especially if we're in a crisis moment where we want to get them connected with something confidential?
That'd be really good, as opposed to just saying, dropping them.
Yeah.
Right,
One feeling.
sorry.
Yes, I don't want to say because if you're having
So
comments.
the Human Rights Commission is listed as one of the places where people could go and complain, right?
It is, I think
You
that's.
know, in other words, somebody could make a complaint to us, but they might not, want to,
Yeah.
and they might want to go somewhere else.
And staff can. The question is members and.
Send some options for people.
Correct. I will definitely look
Thank
into
you.
that and get back to you. It's a great point. In terms, yeah, absolutely. Anyway. So, okay. Right. So. Where were they? So this is also a place to talk about the anti-retaliation piece. So if somebody says, okay, I would love to talk to you about it, but I'm afraid of X, Y, and Z. You can talk to them about the anti-retaliation piece, right? So participating in anything in an investigation as either a complainant or a witness. That person is protected from retaliation by the House rules, and by employment law generally. And of course, that's not always a good answer for people for lots of reasons, but it is, I think, something important to know and potentially to say to people. So if you hear about a potential sexual sexual harassment from a witness, so somebody comes to you and says, I saw something happen to somebody else. There is an obligation in these procedures for the panel to reach out to that somebody else and just let them know, we heard about a thing. Would you like to complain? Here are your options. So that's also a piece of this. So in rule 3, as we touched on, these are the informal resolution pieces. And again, this happens much more frequently. So pursuing this path does depend on the person who is accused of doing something improper, consenting to participate in the informal resolution. Maybe this is a facilitated discussion, maybe this is mediation with an outside mediator, or it could be a discussion between the panel and this person. But if they don't want to do it, they don't have to, and then the complainant has to decide, well, do I want to file a formal complaint or not? And 2 or more panel members can arrange to have the mediation or the discussion. there is a provision in here for the panel to gather more information before that happens. And I don't think it's a in-depth investigation, but it might be something like checking dates or watching a meeting if something is recorded, just so that you don't spend a lot of time at the beginning of a facilitated discussion, like, well, what do you mean it's Tuesday? It wasn't Tuesday. And just preparing oneself and looking at what's available before setting up any kind of process. So hopefully the informal process is the end of the story and people can get some closure and some resolution from some kind of informal discussion for mediation. However, if the complainant in Rule 4 decides not to pursue informal action, the panel may need to step in on something. And this happens when you hear about something that is enough of a concern that it invokes that obligation on behalf of the legislature. And that's what Arlene and Sophie and I are here for, to consult on this stuff. They need to do something. And it may be, you know, anywhere from talking to the person, even though the complainant says they don't want to be involved, to talking to the Capitol Police, right? And this is entirely a case by case analysis, but just because the complainant doesn't want to do anything doesn't mean there isn't an obligation to address it. And often this is like, well, what if it happens again? You know, it's that sort of a thing. Rule 5, this is the beginning of the formal complaint procedure. If this happens, we will go into the whole procedure. I don't think it's worth taking time here to talk about. But this is always an option for people to file that formal complaint and invoke that procedure. It typically involves an investigation by an outside law firm. We don't do that in-house for a lot of reasons.
In talk later about having one on retainer.
We do have one.
Okay, so we do next time.
Yep, we are all set with that if we need it. And at any time, the complainant can say, you know what, I'd like to try the informal process. They can always change their mind, and sometimes it's positive. So finally, again, Rule 20, confidentiality. All records, all information, all discussions are confidential. The only thing here that I want to just point out is that the complainant can grant a limited waiver to discuss with other entities who might have jurisdiction. So imagine you want to talk to the ethics panel, or imagine you want to talk to the Capitol Police. They can grant that limited waiver that allows you to do that. Again, if you have enough of a concern with things like a safety plan. That is possible and allows for some flexibility in that really pretty rigid confidentiality requirement. So that's all I have. The only thing last thing I wanted to say is that in terms of notice and live streaming for this panel, it's at the discretion of the chair. Typically fixing the rules and having non-confidential or procedural discussions that might be of interest to the public, that's something that, you know, is encouraged. But it's not something that you have to do, and there are times when it never isn't. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
I thank you all for your.
Yeah.
Quick question. And it doesn't look like it's addressed under Rule 20, but what if you had a situation where you were aware, Al was aware that they had, say, numerous complaints of someone behaving in a sexually inappropriate way, but no one wanted to pursue it. And so you don't have a complainant that's willing to give a limited waiver, but you do feel that it would be necessary to take action or to speak to the Capitol Police about it.
That's a great question. I mean, if you don't have a complainant, then you don't have that relationship of
I
confidentiality.
guess you would just be sharing with the Capitol Police several incidents that come to our attention of
Yeah.
this person.
Because it's creating a hostile work environment.
Right. And you wouldn't be breaking that sort of obligation to anyone at that point.
Yeah, I was just thinking if there was like an emergency situation where you
But
felt you needed to act, but you didn't have a complainant.
it's a great question. I don't think you would be bound by confidentiality in that.
Well,
Is it?
sometimes it's a question of balancing the risk, right? And sometimes it's better to make a report to avoid a, crime happening, for example, than, breaching. I mean, you hope you're never in that situation, right? I guess it's just what I bring to.
Yeah, oh, I totally agree. And I can confirm that. I can do a little research and confirm that.
That is interesting. I was thinking the same thing because we have that obligation. So just because someone doesn't want to make a complaint doesn't mean we're not necessarily obligated to go forward.
We don't.
But you also have to honor confidentiality.
Yeah, you just don't want to be in a situation where you have information or after the fact, someone's like, but the panel knew
Yeah, why didn't you?
there was this potential thing, right? Why didn't you act? You could have prevented this, the next thing from happening, so. Okay. Excellent.
Okay. Thank you, Maggie. I think I found that it's very helpful to look at addendum A of the jurisdiction panels. There's a chart that sort of shows who's the relationship between respondent and complainant.
That was actually gonna be my question. So the respondent, those are effectively the regulated individuals, the ones the panel has jurisdiction over. Not senators. I mean, I understand that would be the Senate panel, but that would be, although I'm not really clear, because on here it's got the Office of Legislative Counsel, so it would be broader than what you were discussing about with the.
It's a tension and it's the documents just say different things. So this says that there is jurisdiction over that, but the House rules and the procedure and the definition is very clear that it's only House members, House clerk and her staffs, speaker's staff.
Yeah.
And that's what I think should it ideally get sorted out.
Yeah, so this leads to our next
Yes.
issue.
Well, and if I were the queen of the world, staff issues that are not Betsy Ann or Connor and Molly would be handled as a personnel matter by HR. Because I think panels are scary for employees. But that's just me, and that's something that we can take up if you want to.
So you just passed out this bill, and I happened to find out last night through a dinner companion that someone has already introduced H 843.
I think Burrow's already agreed.
What?
Rep Burrow's already agreed.
Yeah, and I didn't know that till last night.
Yeah.
So, I think the discussion was going to be, did we want to reintroduce it? Now it's been reintroduced.
That's now a moot point.
Yeah.
It hasn't been introduced yet, but it's.
She submitted.
Yeah, okay. So we all signed up to that, the members of we had a realization last year that the panel did not cover, elected statewide officials. We had no jurisdiction. And that seemed to be a big gap, and we went and spoke with the Human Rights Commission, and so we decided to come forward with this bill. It never got taken up.
I remember having that conversation, and I think you were in the room with HRC, with Big.
Yeah.
Can you remember, was there an appetite for this? Like, did they want to take it on?
Well, I think she was sort of let us know how overwhelmed they were with work. So I think that could be, if this bill gets taken up, I think we can have that.
Okay.
So I think that.
And there's also a bill that adds staffing to HRC right now.
Yeah.
I think,
Yes,
Yeah.
so we did have there was a bill presentation. Damien came in and gave a bill presentation. Were you on that committee last year, the House Stevens Committee? Yeah. So I think that what would be good would be, I can ask Representative Burrows to make the bill, if she hasn't submitted it yet, she's just collecting signatures.
I don't think she has it back
It's
yet.
right, it's in drafting, so once.
Okay,
drafting.
so I should tell her that we all like, I'm assuming that we all like to sign on.
I'd have to read
Yeah,
it.
right, but it was basically.
It's literally this.
I wasn't here last year, so.
Yeah. It's identical to
Yeah. Right, so,
I give some background to Beth on where the situation came up. Where, I mean, I don't,
Well, it seems
No,
like it was just
I
a
don't-
jurisdictional thing,
I,
but
I
once it
don't
comes
think, I
out.
think we can discuss that in another meeting.
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So,
But I mean, presumably someone, I mean, I can let Representative Burrows know once it's released to us that, the committee would be interested in
great,
sponsoring.
yeah. So that's all that I thought we might want to discuss, but maybe somebody has other issues to talk about or questions or anything.
I guess I have a question. How often does this panel meet? Is there scheduled or just as needed?
No, as needed.
Okay.
Yeah, but I felt like, since we have the training, if you get together now, we're all set up. If there's a complaint, we'll have our team ready.
I'm just gonna update my calendar and I'll read.
Yeah, we have been meeting we've had a lot of meetings when we revised the policy 20
Right.
years ago. And that was a lot of Friday mornings. If this is a good time for everybody, if something comes up that, maybe we do that, we probably maybe find another, I don't know, we have to talk about whether this is an appropriate room, but anyway.
Maybe because it's not soundproof.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Depends on what our business is.
yeah, exactly.
I know room 11 is gonna be freed up fairly soon because we're moving out.
Uh-huh.
You know, where you.
To the one of the new mezzanine ones as soon as it's ready, mid-February.
And at some point, we should have a conference room to weekend.
Oh.
Right?
Oh, okay. And we have used 133 State Street over in New York Times. So that's something that can be worked out. So, thank you, everybody, for being willing to be on the panel. Yeah.
I hope it's a quick question. Did the Senate ever finish their work on this?
Yeah, we did.
They did.
And Senator Clarkson is the chair. And I'll let her know that we have a meeting. So, and you, so is it, you don't work with the Senate, it's, I think the president, Bloomer, right? It's
Senator Bloomer, yeah.
Senator Bloomer, right? Okay.
So I have what I think is an easy question for you, I think for one of you, we sometimes have interns, college kids mainly. And then, of course, if there are the children, the ages, who do they go to for a complaint?
So in the first instance, they would go to a doorkeeper or Agatha or,
Dates.
yes.
Yeah.
So
Yes, thank you. Yes.
So they just would do that, okay.
Right.
All right.
Interns can go to the legislator with whom they work. They can come to the Legislative Office of Human Resources. We did an orientation for them to introduce ourselves, tell them about this policy
Okay, good.
and the procedures. So they essentially have the same rules or resources as staff.
Okay.
And it's really who they're most comfortable with. They could also go to their people at their university who can then reach back out to their contacts here, which is Arlene and Agatha and me.
Okay.
Because that may be the person whom they precisely.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thanks, everybody.
Great.